Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Danny Welsh. I'm the Dean for the School of STEM at the American Public University System, one of the sponsors of the conference. And I just wanted to provide a short set of closing remarks. It really has been an exciting and intellectually stimulating 2 days. And I just genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank everyone who has contributed. What I thought I would do is try and just identify a couple of overarching themes as I have perceived them through the conference. And I was able to kind of gin this down to 3 different themes. And the first is that biomedical science is critical. The second is that space is growing increasingly interdisciplinary. And the third is that space drives STEM education. And given my role here at the university, I'm particularly excited about that one. So I'm a fan of books about the heyday of Arctic and Antarctic exploration. This is generally between 1870 and 1920 or so. And I just finished a book about Ernest Shackleton's 1914 to 1917 Ross Sea Ice Party. Everyone's more or less familiar with Shackleton's story. His ship, the Endurance, became stuck on the ice. His goal was to walk across Antarctica. He never made it. His ship was crushed and sank. His men had to live on the ice floes and then on Elephant Island for months. 5 of his men rowed a 21-foot boat, the James Caird. This is an open boat for over 700 miles across the Southern Ocean, and then scaled a mountain range and slid down the other side to a manned whaling station and then returned to Elephant Island to rescue the remaining men. Amazing story. He didn't lose any souls from that part of the expedition. What people don't know is that there was another half to that expedition. There was a group of people that were going to meet him on the other side and lay supply depots halfway across Antarctica because he couldn't carry enough supplies with him to go all the way across the continent. That expedition didn't fare as well. Their ship, like the Endurance, became beset in ice, but it actually left and it abandoned the party that was on the continent. Those men had to overwinter. All of them suffered horrendously, and 3 of them died. But they didn't die from what you would normally think. They didn't die from the cold. They didn't die from the loneliness. They didn't starve to death. They died of scurvy. And scurvy is about, you'd really have to work hard to die of scurvy today because we know what causes it, and it's so easy to fix. It's a vitamin C deficiency. But they didn't know that at the time. This was 1917. It wasn't all that long ago. They suffered profoundly of scurvy, and they didn't really know how to solve it. And this wasn't a problem that engineering would have fixed. It was a biomedical problem. And there's a lot of overlap between Arctic and alpine exploration and exploration in space. You have to kind of prepare for the same things. So how does this relate to the conference that we've just attended for the last 2 days? So the theme, as I've understood it, is that outposts in space, from Skylab 50 years ago to Artemis to the International Space Station to the upcoming Gateway, are really designed to allow us to go further and stay longer in space. Sure, there's engineering challenges inherent in that goal, but some of the largest challenges lie in the biomedical impacts. How do we keep people alive so far from home and for so long? As many of our speakers pointed out, in the Apollo missions, you were only gone for a couple of days. You could always just come back and probably solve the problem. On the Mars missions, that's not an option. You can't come back for 18 months, even if you wanted to. So we need to be able to anticipate problems and be able to solve them in space, not just maintain or triage and then fix them when we return. We have telemedicine, we have modern ventilators, we have rapid vaccine development. All of these grew out of the work from Skylab. As Dr. Polk told us, he told us about some of the biomedical science that's being done on the International Space Station. They're getting ready to bioprint a human knee meniscus on the International Space Station. That's fascinating. That's the kind of science that we need to be able to do in order to keep people alive so far from Earth for so long. So why do we study space? Well, as our first keynote pointed out, he identified a couple of reasons: knowledge, survival, challenge, and the future. But I'd like to add one more, and that's curiosity. Space allows us to study almost anything in a new context. It presents new challenges, new questions, and new opportunities for fields that everyone might have thought had become boring, or that there were no new challenges on Earth. And because space is so vast and we're continuing to push the envelope of what we can do and where we can go and how long we can stay, we're constantly opening up new exciting questions. So that's the curiosity aspect. This conference was amazingly diverse. We saw talks from the obvious places that you would expect, like science and engineering, but also medicine, ethics, commerce, economics, policy, information technology, security. It was just amazing, and it's all applicable, and it all ties together, and none of it can stand alone. It all has to come together and to make space travel, space exploration feasible. My most favorite thing is that space drives education. Space forces us to do things that we've never done before. And this happens in so many areas. We need to figure out how to do new things. And that kind of goes back to the curiosity part, but that's also really fun. If you're a scientist, if you're inquisitive by nature, the opportunity to think about old stuff in new ways is really exciting. And I think that that is why during the Apollo era, we saw a pretty rapid increase in people going to school to study STEM. And I hope that our new space age that we're coming into, this sort of merging of commercial space and space exploration and space capitalism, is really going to drive a second renaissance in STEM education around space. I'm really excited about that. Another theme is that space is becoming more integrated and more approachable. I think Elon Musk was probably mentioned at least once in every talk I attended. I kind of got tired of hearing his name, but he, for better or worse, has really changed the game for space. Everybody uses space, whether you realize it or not. Probably the most common is GPS. There's GPS receivers everywhere now, but also Starlink. You use satellites that you don't even know about on a regular basis. And the cost for all of this stuff has come down substantially. And again, SpaceX is a big part of that. The cost to reduce launches has reduced substantially. The increased time to launch, we can now launch stuff much more frequently. I think I read that SpaceX was doing 600 launches a year, which is, that can't be right. It must be something less than that, but that just seems like the cadence of launches is now incredibly rapid. And the upside of that is that the cost per kilogram has come down substantially. There's another aspect that I hadn't thought about, but that space stuff is now largely reusable. Not all of it, but we're starting to see reusable spacecraft. And that is going to result in a used market for used reusable spacecraft. So if you can't get in on the space game because the cost is too high, eventually you will be. It's kind of like being able to get that 15-year-old Chevy Blazer instead of the brand new one that is maybe 10% of the price. So is there a gold rush around space right now? Maybe. We heard a talk from a federal economist that the US space economy is about $212 billion annually, and it's growing at 3.9% per year. That's huge. That's not pocket change. And as Dr. Zubrin said in his opening keynote, you don't get rich in a gold rush by mining gold. You get rich by selling genes. So there's a lot of opportunity to contribute to the space economy, even if you aren't an astronaut, even if you're not doing something directly related to space flight, if you're not traveling into space, if you're not building rockets. There's still a massive amount of work that you can do to contribute to the space economy and benefit from it. So those are my comments. I just wanted to thank the Policy Studies Organization, particularly Daniel Gutierrez, for helping us put this on. I'd like to thank some of my colleagues here at APUS, our president, Nuno Fernandez, our provost, Beth Johnson, Jenny Douglas, who helps with runs our research office, the events team, the media team. And I'd especially like to thank all the moderators, the presenters, and the students for contributing and being here and making this such an intellectually stimulating event. I want to point out that our CESA journal, we have a journal called the Space Education and Strategic Applications Journal. We call it CESA. It's going to be publishing conference proceedings, and all of the speakers will be receiving an invitation to contribute to that volume. And we hope that you will take us up on that invitation. It is peer reviewed, and we're really looking forward to having a special volume coming out to celebrate the accomplishments of this conference. So with that, I will thank everyone for their attendance, and I look forward to seeing everyone next year.